the monologue by the gravedigger, also known as the clown, which is in Hamlet for only a short period of time and is an incredibly ambiguous character. And I'm exploring the question, was Hamlet afraid of death? And what does the play say about death in the real world? My quote that I anchored it to was, "But that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will. It makes us rather bear those ills we have and fly to others that we know not of." I am the fool. I am the dismissed, the forgotten jester, the man who sings and juggles skulls. I am the lunatic, the crazed, the addle-minded man who fishes for trouts in the clouds. I can see through skin and sinews and flesh, and peer like God beneath your shallow surfaces and down deep to the watery chambers of your innermost soul. I watch you stretch your lonely hour upon the stage, so blind to all around you until your little lights gutter and your little hearts become cold and still. I place you away in your wooden boxes like toys grown too old and torn to play with anymore, to let the worms and maggots take care of you how they will. I'm digging a grave, much like the one I've dug so many times before. It is for a man different than others, though, and as I dig this singular grave, I raise a drink to you shapes that dance around me in the shadows, and tell you the stories I have gained from my peeking and eavesdropping on the minds I have peeled upon, and shower some alcohol-tainted breath onto the substance of his death, as we spile Arantina towards his rest. I dug her grave to the exact measurements of her casket once her body was placed in it, her pale skin like ice contrasting the ebony. Her hair seemed to melt and weave into the silk she was folded in. Her face was like a broken mirror, reflecting serenity, just the shadow of her innocence shattered into 1,000 cracked glass shards. Serenity broken by the death of her father, innocence destroyed as the most beloved man to her became a murderer. A murderer? Would any of your minds survive those double blows without some consequence? Such a jagged twist in her senseless plot, I'm sure you'd agree. Her delicate sanity was cruelly ripped away as the world came caving in. The delicate mind inside her skull was torn and bloodied as death and darkness poured in like a flood. Look at her face. Poor dear. She wasn't ready for the challenge. The answers evaded her, eons beyond her reach, drifting and wheeling into the horizon as she drifted on the water. Her hair billowed out around her like the far-reaching smithereens from an explosion. See here, the water did come to her, the water in darkness cascading in like a flood. Too much water had poor Ophelia, too much slaughtering of her innocence, all at once for the girl to take. I dug a grave for a unique man yesterday. It's common for me to dig holes in the ground, to have heave these bodies in, of course, but most of the time it slips my mind whether I have or not. It's not like I've ever gotten paid for it, or that many know I did. But yet that last body I remember digging for, quite specifically, is extraordinary, I hear, in its transition from mortal to bones. But I do not keep in touch with the stories of most men. I remember most because I knew him. I knew him. Those cheeks were pressed to his bones like a skull already. Shutters over his eyes blank. His veins still had the appearance of pulsing. His fingertips like tiny seashells, white and still. The blood drawn from his face as if a great shock had overcame him. He is gone. His body is now stiff and frozen in the casket he was placed in. Bodies all look the same in some ways, don't they? These two won't last for long. It'll be nary 7 years before they turn to dust, and their dust mingles even so with the dust of the cages they are buried in. It's a strange paradox to encase them and call it God's will. If God willed them back to the soil, wouldn't he want them to hasten there as soon as possible? With none of this hiding, shielding, coveting, and protecting from the world's deepest layers. But never mind. It holds no gravity or importance except to the Dane himself. His face seemed to be molded in perpetual lines of thought. The weight of the world creasing his young brows like a knife dragged across clay. He was so similar to the frail Ophelia. His mind in the past was so innocent in comparison to his expression of solemnity and desperation now, ragged with the consequences of too much breaking, too much drowning in subject he knew not of. I despaired and wished to help him, but I was not put on this earth to make the lives of men easier to eradicate their fears. I must gaze upon their backs as they scurry around, their terrified whimpering surrounding my silence like a cloak. Hamlet whimpered more than most, and justly enough. His innocence was broken in a rush of violence, in his dead father's blood, and the flood of this darkness carried like a babe in each fold in the dress of his mother and the jeweled crown of his uncle. Hamlet was as shattered as Ophelia. as overcome in something he didn't have the capabilities to understand. His story was of death and of everyone's incapacity to grasp it fully. For who could bear the reality of their coming demise, hold the bony knuckles of the unknown land, feel the weight of death sitting on their chest, like a great moon in all its glory dropping from the heavens? Without warning, but yet I ramble. As he rambled on, trying to find a course and not be driven insane. Not to be driven insane by the weight of the matter he couldn't understand, I ramble on. I'm the only one in the world, trying to relieve the guilt of not being able to save him from his agony. I'm the only one in the world who can understand death. While Hamlet's mind was stronger than most, there was a barrier between the fortress about his fragile brain and the rest of the universe. He bravely battled the innate imperfections of the mind, striving to not succumb to the same fate as poor Ophelia. But even so, the bricks of that wall are the only thing keeping humanity from becoming shredded by the darkness. Thus is Hamlet's story tragic. Thus is the tragedy of your world. I'm so tired. Even at my core, I feel myself riddled with pockets of exhaustion. I lay down my shovel and lie down in my grave. I crafted it for myself with every stroke I've ever dug in my life, in this cool clay of the ground. My grave is the deepest. It stretches down to the very pits of this world and to its earthy heart. I don't have a casket to keep me encased. I will return to the earth soon. I will give myself 6 years, dust to dust. I sigh and rest my shovel by my side. They'll find me here and cover me if ever I am found. I'm so tired. It is exhausting to be the dismissed, the addle-minded man, the forgotten jester. It is exhausting to hide the secrets of the universe within myself. It is exhausting to round the world out while knowing what God keeps in his heart and soul. It is exhausting to continue life when I understand its nature utterly. I am the clown. I am the lunatic, the crazed. I am the fool. I am the grave digger. Now I die, and the secrets of death die with me.